No matter where you look in human history, across every single continent, there's this one constant, this deep, driving search for meaning, for connection, for trying to figure out our place in the whole grand scheme of things. So, yeah, let's dive into this incredible landscape of human belief. All right, so let me ask you something right off the bat. If you had to take a wild guess, how many different religions or spiritual traditions do you think exist on our planet today? A few dozen? Maybe 100? 1,000? Get this, the answer, or at least the best estimate we have, is around 4,200. Wow. That number is just staggering, isn't it? It really speaks to this unbelievable diversity of thought that's just woven into the very fabric of our world. Okay, but before we can even begin to wrap our heads around a number that big, we kind of need to make sure we're all on the same page. I mean, what do we actually mean when we say the word religion? Well, one of the most helpful ways to think about it is as a cultural system. See, it's not just about a private belief you hold in your head, it's a whole shared framework with symbols, stories, and rituals that actually shape how an entire community sees the world. And this image just perfectly illustrates that diversity, right? I mean, a definition is one thing, but this really brings it home. You've got symbols for these huge global faiths like Christianity and Islam, right next to symbols for modern pagan traditions like Wicca or even Kemetism, which is a revival of ancient Egyptian faith. Every single one represents its own unique cultural system, its own way of connecting to the spiritual. It's a pretty powerful reminder of just how incredibly varied this human impulse really is. All right, so we've got a working definition, and we have a sense of the sheer diversity. Now, let's get into the numbers. Let's really look at the scale of faith and see how this all plays out across the entire global population. So, what I find really fascinating here is the breakdown. Now, it's no surprise that Christianity and Islam are the two biggest groups by a lot. But look at that third slice, unaffiliated. That's more than 15% of the world. And according to the source data, this group includes everyone from agnostics and atheists to secular humanists. Basically, anyone who just says none when asked about religion. It's a huge and growing group in many places, and that tells you a lot about the shifts happening in the world today. Okay, percentages are one thing, but when you see the actual numbers, man, it really hits you. We're talking about over 2 billion Christians, more than 1.5 billion Muslims, a billion Hindus, but it's also about faiths with smaller but incredibly dedicated followings. You've got Sikhism, a monotheistic faith from the Punjab region with about 30 million people, and Judaism, one of the oldest Abrahamic faiths with around 14 million. These aren't just ideas, they are massive, living, breathing global communities. So we've got the how many, but what about the where? Faith has a geography. So where on earth do these billions of people actually live? Let's take a look at the map. This map gives us an amazing bird's eye view. Right away, you can see these huge regional patterns. All those shades of red and blue, that shows the dominance of Christianity all through the Americas, Europe, and Southern Africa. And then this vast swath of green, that's Islam, stretching right across North Africa, the Middle East, and parts of Asia. And that bright, vibrant pink, that's Hinduism, which you can see is heavily concentrated in the Indian subcontinent. And here's where it gets even crazier. If you zoom in from that big world map, the data shows something pretty striking. In some countries, basically everyone follows a single religious tradition. On one hand, you've got places like Samoa and Romania, where about 99% of the people identify as Christian. And then on the other, you have the Maldives and Mauritania, where it's reported as 100% Muslim. So the takeaway here is that religious identity can be incredibly concentrated on a national level. But faith isn't just numbers and maps, right? It's grounded in real places. It's tied to mountains and rivers, ancient temples, and bustling cities. So let's take a quick visual tour through this world of sacred places. Let's kick off our tour in Africa, a continent with just an incredible range of sacred geography. You've got places like the ancient rock-hewn churches of Lalibela in Ethiopia. They're just a marvel of engineering and devotion. And then you have living traditions like the Osun Osogbo Sacred Grove in Nigeria, which is a dense forest believed to be the home of a Yoruba fertility goddess. All right, now let's hop over to the Middle East, where the landscape is just layered with thousands of years of religious history. This is a region where one single city, Jerusalem, holds some of the holiest sites for Judaism and Christianity, while just a stone's throw away, you have cities like Mecca and Karbala that are the absolute epicenters of pilgrimage for Sunni and Shia Muslim. Now, heading over to South America, we find this really fascinating mix. You have these ancient, mysterious sites like the Nazca Lines in Peru, these giant drawings in the desert whose purpose we still don't fully understand. And they exist alongside massive Catholic pilgrimage sites like Bom Jesus da Lapa in Brazil, which is actually built inside a cave system. It really shows you how indigenous history and colonial faith have both shaped the land. And for our last stop, let's look at South Asia, which is just jam-packed with pilgrimage sites. You have the city of Varanasi, where Hindus come to bathe in the sacred Ganges River. You've got Bodh Gaya, the exact spot where the Buddha is said to have reached enlightenment. And then there's the breathtaking Golden Temple, the holiest site for Sikhs. Every one of these spots is like a powerful center of gravity for millions of people. Okay, wow. We've looked at the sheer number of beliefs, the billions of people who follow them, where they live, the places they hold sacred. So let's just take a step back. What does all of this really tell us about, well, us, about the human experience? And that brings us right back to this image, this wheel of symbols all spinning around our one single planet. It really seems like no matter who we are or where we're from, a fundamental part of being human is building these complex systems to help us grapple with the biggest questions there are. The paths are many, but the search itself seems to be universal. Which leaves us with a pretty incredible thought to chew on, doesn't it? The fact that humanity didn't come up with just one answer, but thousands of different answers to these huge spiritual questions is just astounding. So what does it tell us about ourselves? That the search for meaning is something we all do, but the answers we find are so beautifully, incredibly diverse.